Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are tackling something that, let's be honest, usually reads like a total cure for insomnia, the massive Common Core ELA document. But stick with me, because we're going to break this whole thing down into a really clear, cohesive roadmap. We're going to see how these standards are actually intentionally designed to produce 21st century critical thinkers. And to really bring this to life, we'll be using a specific model throughout, a Grade 7 oral tradition mini project. We'll look at exactly how these standards translate into evidence-based reasoning and real transfer practice right there in the classroom. Let's get into it.
Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. First, we'll look at the ultimate literacy goal. Then we'll hit reading, complexity, and evidence. After that, writing, arguments, and explanations. Fourth is speaking, listening, and language. And finally, we'll wrap up with an integrated literacy model.
So, starting things off with Section 1, the ultimate literacy goal.
We actually don't start with some restrictive, bureaucratic checklist. Instead, we start with the end game. The standards essentially act like a reverse-engineered roadmap, and they explicitly state that college and career-ready students comprehend as well as critique. I love that phrasing. It means students don't just passively absorb information, right? They're meant to become open-minded, discerning readers who work really hard to understand exactly what an author is saying, while simultaneously questioning those assumptions, checking the facts, and assessing the reasoning.
These defining traits really humanize the standards. The ultimate purpose here is to build independent, culturally aware learners. Think about it. We want students who can build strong content knowledge across a ton of different subjects, adapt their tone based on who they're talking to, use technology thoughtfully, and actually inhabit worlds different from their own to understand diverse perspectives. It's a completely holistic vision of what a capable citizen looks like.
Now, to build those impressive traits, the document's architecture relies on two complementary parts, working perfectly in tandem. First up, you've got the Broad College and Career Readiness, or CCR, anchor standards. These are basically the backbone. They define the general, cross-disciplinary expectations. Then, working right alongside those, you have the grade-specific standards. These take those broad aims and translate them into age-appropriate end-of-year expectations. So it creates this cumulative progression. A kindergartner is stepping onto the exact same ladder that a 12th grader is climbing.
Moving on to Section 2, Reading, Complexity, and Evidence.
To get students to grapple with complex texts, the standards rely on this staircase of increasing text complexity. It starts right at the bottom with kindergarten foundational skills, print concepts, phonics, and students steadily progress up those steps year after year. The goal? To have them reading and comprehending complex literary and informational texts totally independently by the time they graduate high school.
And here is a massive paradigm shift that honestly surprises a lot of people. In elementary school, reading is basically a 50-50 split between literature and informational texts. But watch what happens by 12th grade. A whopping 70% of a student's reading across all subjects must be informational text. This is a direct mirror of the rigorous, info-heavy reading they're going to face in college and out there in the modern workplace.
Because of this huge shift, students have to habitually root their arguments in solid evidence. Let's bring it back to our model, that Grade 7 oral tradition mini project. A student can't just say they liked a traditional myth. Nope. According to Grade 7 Reading Standard 1, they have to cite several pieces of textual evidence to support analysis. This mini project is perfectly designed for this kind of transfer practice, taking that abstract skill of citing evidence and applying it practically to complex historical narratives.
All right, Section 3, Writing, Arguments and Explanations.
Writing actually shifts right alongside reading. While high schoolers absolutely still convey experiences and write narratives, the overwhelming focus shifts pretty heavily to persuasion and explanation. By 12th grade, 80% of writing is dedicated to explaining complex ideas or persuading an audience using valid reasoning and relevant evidence. And those are the exact same skills those 7th graders are already building when they write about oral traditions.
You see, writing is deeply intertwined with reading. Writing Standard 9 literally forces this connection. When our 7th grader finalizes their oral tradition mini project, they aren't just summarizing what happened. They are actively pulling evidence from the myths they've read to support their own research. It is perfect transfer practice. They are applying reading comprehension directly to their writing output. Reading and writing really are just two sides of the exact same literacy coin.
Next up, Section 4, Speaking, Listening, and Language.
Okay. Speaking and listening goes way beyond just standing up at the front of the room and delivering a stiff formal presentation. It demands active, flexible communication. Students are expected to participate in rich, highly structured conversations with diverse partners. They have to evaluate a speaker's reasoning, integrate quantitative data, and adapt their speech to fit the context of whatever the task is. It's really all about genuine collaboration and synthesizing a whole bunch of different ideas.
Meanwhile, the language strand isn't just about grammar policing, which is a huge relief. While it definitely covers the conventions of standard English, what's brilliant is how it treats language as an intentional craft. Students are taught to make effective choices for meaning and style. They focus on nuances, figurative language, and picking up vital domain-specific vocabulary. So language becomes this flexible, powerful tool for expression, rather than just a set of rigid rules they have to memorize.
And that brings us to Section 5, an integrated literacy model.
This is really the grand synthesis of the whole document. The overarching philosophy here is that these 4 strands, they are not silos. They are closely connected processes that absolutely must be shared across all subject areas. You literally cannot compartmentalize literacy into a single 45-minute block of the school day. It has to be a completely shared responsibility. Basically, literacy isn't just for English class anymore. History, science, and technical teachers are explicitly tasked with using their own content expertise to help students meet the unique literacy challenges of their specific fields. So, a science teacher is teaching students how to read experimental evidence, just as a history teacher is helping that same 7th grader from our oral tradition project analyze primary source historical myths.
So I want to leave you with this. If every single teacher is now a literacy teacher, how deeply will that transform the future of education? When students are practicing evidence-based reasoning, comprehending incredibly complex texts, and collaborating across every single classroom they enter, we are building a generation of critical thinkers who are genuinely ready to solve the challenges of tomorrow. The roadmap is right here in front of us. The question is, how will you use it in your classroom? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.